While, of course, the purpose of using conscious guidance and control is to change how you use yourself during essentially every moment of your life, we can also specifically work on honing our skill in implementing this system. You can do that by having a teacher help you in a lesson, but you also can and should work on your own. So today, we'll look at what you need to start effectively practicing on your own to improve your posture and use of self. Many people regularly work out to keep their body in shape, but most people do not really spend any time working to improve their posture. Most common workouts rely on repetitive activities that can tend to strengthen one's poor postural habits. So if your desire is to change your posture, how do you specifically work on that? To start off, you'll have to address some very simple things. If you want to change how you stand or sit or walk, you have to practice those gestures. It sounds funny to practice standing, yet many people lean whenever they stand and would be uncomfortable standing for 5 minutes without twisting themselves up or leaning. The way to change that is to put some thought and work into it. When you work on your posture, though you will repeat gestures and adjustments, you don't want to mindlessly repeat them. The point is not repetition. It's to use your conscious mind to guide yourself through the movements so that you perform them properly. That's why we have to verify that we're performing the movements as we intend. Most people will struggle to make movements that go against their habits, and so they will often make shortening movements while thinking that they're making the right lengthening movements. So the first thing you will need to practice on your own is a means by which to get visual feedback. This becomes less crucial the more experienced you are, though it's always helpful. In the early stages of changing your posture, visual feedback is completely essential. A mirror is the quickest and easiest way to get feedback, but video recording yourself is superior because you can go back and analyze what you've done afterwards. A mirror or video recording device like a webcam is really all that you absolutely need. Some other objects that can be useful are a hard flat chair, a stick like a yardstick, a book or similarly shaped object, a wall, and a scarf or elastic band. These are just tools that we can use to help assist or challenge ourselves as we perform certain gestures and procedures. If you're recording yourself, you want to wear light-colored clothing and have enough light so you can see what's happening. It also helps to wear form-fitting clothes and to tuck your shirt into your pants, as that will help you to see how the bony structures are moving more easily. Especially when you're a beginner, you'll need all the help you can get in seeing what you're doing. Everything else we need will be mental objects. As we've looked at in this series, we need to have a sort of map of various points on our body. We need a model of both the gestures we want to perform and the posture that we are aiming to attain. We need verbal directions and sets of directions that we will implement, and we need the framework to perform the coordinated movements. The previous episodes of this series have covered these ideas, so now let's see how we put them into action. We will start with a very basic example, standing. Again, I know this sounds a little funny, but most people can get tired out by making small adjustments to how they stand. Because even though there are no weights being lifted and there are no repetitive actions to build the muscle, you will be working out deep postural muscles by using them in ways that are new and unusual for you. It's not likely that you will get sweaty or out of breath, but you may genuinely get tired out even by small adjustments during a relatively simple gesture like standing. Stand in a way that you can capture visual feedback of yourself from the side. You will likely find that your iliacs are forward of your ankle or instep point. We know that our model says that the iliacs should be in line with the instep. We remember the directions to pull the iliacs back in space and up away from the knees, and to pull the upper sacrum back faster than the lower sacrum. We put the directions into action on a 1, 2, 3 count, and we see where we end up at 3. Maybe you succeeded, maybe you didn't. If you didn't, make the adjustment again and see if you did better or worse. Try to identify what's going wrong. Did your lower sacrum go back too fast? Did your pelvis not lift at the front? When you look at your visual feedback, you might find that when you moved your pelvis back in space, your whole torso moved back, and you moved your upper sternum back the fastest. This is what F.M. Alexander found when he observed himself in a mirror while speaking, when he was trying to figure out why he was losing his voice. He saw that he pulled his upper chest and head back habitually. If that's what you found, we can add the direction to either prevent the movement of the upper sternum, which will be the easier direction, or we can even try to move the upper sternum forward and up as we move the pelvis back. Remember, we want the upper sternum lined up over the lower sternum, iliacs, and instep. This encapsulates nearly everything we've looked at in this series. We use verbal directions to guide ourselves into performing the multiple coordinated movements that are the means whereby we produce the antagonistic pulls that lengthen the back in order to improve the function of the thoracolumbar fascia, which is confirmed, or not, by visual feedback. If we want to bring one of our tools in, we can stand in front of the chair and see if we can move the pelvis back and up in such a way that the upper end of the leg moves back and brings the back of the leg against the chair. If we're really struggling, we could put a hand on the lower ribs and the other hand on the upper sternum, remembering to take care to extend the arms. That will help us stretch the thoracolumbar fascia by widening the upper back, and get some weight forward to help us counterbalance the weight we're moving back. A more complex gesture we could look at is this gesture we call monkey, which is useful for lowering the torso and is the first stage of going to sit or squat. I go over this in more detail in other videos, but the general premise of this gesture is that we want to move our pelvis back relative to the knee, which does not move forward or backwards in space. The torso must be angled, and we want to keep the back and the front lines of the body straight. To do that, we need to apply directions to rotate the rib cage around the lower sternum, or to be precise, the height of the armpit. We want the center of rotation to be at the front of the body so that the lower ribs truly move back in space. The common problem you may observe if you use visual feedback is a pulling back of the upper sternum and a protrusion of the midsection. This seems like it should be a simple gesture. It's just bending of certain joints in order to lower ourselves, a gesture that could be useful in a ton of situations. But most people will struggle to make this gesture, and could work on it for many months, continuing to see improvement the entire time. In the beginning, it won't really matter if you move the knees forward or backwards a bit. That will be a minor concern as you work to just succeed in getting the pelvis to move back, something most people will struggle with at first. Many people have trouble moving their pelvis back like this, and will instead lean their torso forward and barely move the pelvis back relative to the knees. But as your skill improves, you can get into more and more nuanced details. If you want to prevent your knees from going forward, you could put a chair against a wall and have the front of the seat block your knees and prevent them from moving forward. If you're moving your knees too far back and ending up out of balance backwards, you could put the seat a little bit back behind you and pull the lower end of your knee, like the head of the fibula and the lower interior condyle, forward to prevent the knees from moving back to the chair. You can apply a forward pull that does not move the knee forward in space, but only prevents the backward movement that can occur when you move the pelvis and midsection back. You could use your stick to measure off from the front of your ankle to the wall, and then place the stick between the wall and your lower sternum to prevent you from going too far forward with your torso as you go into the monkey gesture. You can place a book along your back to help you make sure you are lifting your lower back and up into the book as you move your midsection back. By taking some time to the side to just specifically work on coordinating these movements together, you will discover things about yourself. You'll realize you favor one side, or feel soreness when you use your muscles in certain ways. You'll come to understand your habitual responses and gain the skill to say, no, I'm going to move differently, and you'll be able to see yourself do just that. As these simple gestures become easier, you'll then move to more complex gestures. Obviously, I cannot list out every single procedure and game that can be used, or every way that every tool can be used. I'll continue to go through various gestures, procedures, and sets of directions that can be used on this channel. But if you want to try to do this on your own, you're going to have to really think about what you're doing and experiment. By recording yourself, you can gather data, you can analyze that data, and you can refine how you use yourself and thereby change your posture. I think it's helpful to have a teacher, but even if you have a teacher, you still need to specifically work on your coordination like this on your own. People know if they don't work out or otherwise exercise their body, there's a price to pay. And similarly, if we never spend any time developing our ability to coordinate movements, there's a price to pay. This is less well understood because, as you can see, this work isn't as straightforward as just repeating an exercise. You have to involve your reasoning mind. That's really at the heart of everything we're doing here. That's the only route to conscious guidance and control. So spend a little time working directly on your coordination and see if you can make some of these movements. Can you give yourself a set of verbal directions? Can you follow those directions? What do you learn about your patterns of movement when you do this? Try some of this out, then join me next episode, and we'll finish this series by pulling together everything we've looked at and charting out the path forward.